Absolutely right. I mean, I fully support people's right to peaceful protest, but this was not a peaceful protest. It was really quite violent.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 7th of January. I'm Nana Akua.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
If we went as far as a legal instrument to deploy, which would be necessary, I would then have a debate in this House so all members could know exactly what we're doing, make their points of view, and then we would have a vote in this House on the issue.
The Prime Minister tells the House of Commons Britain is committed to sending a peacekeeping force to Ukraine after any ceasefire. Says MPs will get a vote before the deployment of any troops.
That's right, MPs get a vote on how many and troops are deployed to Ukraine if required after any peace deal. But why not come to the Commons earlier with a statement sooner? That's a question the Tories asked at PMQs within the past hour.
We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland.
President Donald Trump doubles down, and the White House confirms that the United States is considering all options, including military force to acquire Greenland, sparking fury in Europe and fresh questions over the future of NATO.
Elsewhere, Chagosians have gathered in Parliament Square in a last show of defiance after fresh Lords rebellion deals another blow to Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal, forcing the government to delay the bill.
Yes, the Prime Minister very exercised about the fact that Greenland should decide its own future, yet the Chagosian people did not get a say in the Prime Minister's decision to hand the islands over to Mauritius at great cost for the next 100 years. I'll be joined shortly by some of the Chagosians and one of the Lords throwing, they hope, a bit of a spanner in the works.
Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has announced Layla Cunningham as the party's London mayoral candidate, confirming that she will challenge Sadiq Khan in the up-and-coming elections.
And the government is accused of killing off rural pubs as ministers move to slash the drink-drive limit so even one pint can put drivers over the limit and against the law. Well, critics warn it's another blow to country life, while Labour insists it's all about road safety.
And the big freeze continues. Schools are closed, travel chaos, and Storm Giorgetti is incoming with 20 centimetres worth of snow.
Well, I'm not sure how much my soup for lunch is keeping me cool, because the cold snap continues here in Stoke-on-Trent. Some stubborn snow behind us, and I'll give you the rest of the forecast over the next couple of days.
Wow, what a pleasure. Gloria De Piero, lovely to see you. New year, new PMQs.
Thank you for letting me sit with you for a fantastic show. Happy New Year to you, Nana. First time I've seen you. Yeah, big sort of year for politics, another big year. It's weird, isn't it? Because we've now got multi-party politics. We've never had that before.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference because everyone's trying to define what 2026 is going to be. Is this a bit of a reset moment for the government? Yet another one?
Oh, what you mean? Apart from the first steps, the 5 foundations,
phase 3, phase 4, what's it on now?
But, no, seriously, I mean, my goodness, wouldn't we all love it if Keir Starmer is right, and that by the end of this year we'll all be feeling better off, that the shopping bill will be lower and our bills will be down. I mean, bring it on. That's a big claim to make. He's got a year to deliver.
Our shopping bill's going to be lower.
He's promising.
Is he promising deflation? I don't think we're going to. Well, Gloria, thanks so much. Lovely to see you, as always. Thank you very much.
All right, well, breaking news coming up in the last couple of minutes. the US military is attempting to seize the Marinera oil tanker. Now, Charlie Peters joins us now with the latest. Charlie.
I think we're getting Charlie up. He's coming to us by the phone. This is a breaking news story, of course. We hear this is an active operation as we speak. Perhaps American troops taking off from British soil to seize this tanker. Let's speak to Charlie Peters, who is on the phone for us now. Charlie, are you there?
Hi, I'm there. I hope you can both hear me now. Yes, so I believe that they have now secured and successfully seized that oil tanker, which changed its direction very suddenly. The Marinera, formerly known as the Bella One, before it became a Russian ship in the last couple of weeks. Based on an image released by the Russian news agency RT, from what I can see, that does appear to be a United States Air Force Special Operations Forces helicopter, similar to those used in that night raid, that dawn raid on Caracas in Venezuela. We've been tracking the movements of US naval and air power in the United Kingdom since Sunday morning, when we saw an arrival of 10 plus heavy cargo planes, each of them likely carrying these special forces, helicopters and other assets. We've also seen a crescendo of maritime surveillance in the last 4 days, including from US Navy P-8 spy planes, but also even aircraft from the Irish Air Corps, from the French Air Force, and this morning and yesterday, the Royal Air Force appearing to get involved in this North Atlantic surveillance operation. You might have thought they were just tracking the tanker, but I actually think, Tom and Nana, it was more serious. They were looking out for Russian submarines that could have been escorting and protecting this tanker. A very tense diplomatic decision for the United States to make, especially as the Kremlin made a formal diplomatic request to the United States on New Year's Eve saying, do not seize this tanker. Well, where has the tanker been? It left from Iran in August, going towards Venezuela. It approached that blockade in December. The United States Coast Guard attempted to board it. That failed. And they then moved very quickly to the North Atlantic, that tanker fleeing. There's no oil on it, which has led many to ask, what is on board that tanker moving from Iran to Venezuela and now attempting to flee to Russia that has been so important for the Kremlin to protect? Could there be a key link here between Hezbollah and Venezuela and the Russians involved? But it does look as though the Americans have successfully conducted that seizure operation, which we were predicting at GBNews on Sunday, having seen the build-up of those forces. And Tom, you're asking about them being launched from British bases. This morning, we did see a lot of movement out of RAF Mildenhall in Suffolk and RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire. We saw the refueling Strato tankers. We've also seen the AC-130J gunships, which would have likely provided both refueling but also top cover air support. They carry 105mm howitzer cannons hanging out the side of them, serious firepower that they would not have wanted to intervene with. We're also now seeing an expectation that a lot more forces are going to move forward and be involved in the security of this vessel. Because, Tom and Nana, the question is now, where will it go? Could it be taken to a port in Britain for further security? It could, just based on the geography and the deep sea ports available, end up in Liverpool. But as it stands, US forces successfully have intercepted and boarded and seized that oil tanker despite Russian protestations. And we'll wait to see what happens next.
All right, Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Right, well, joining us now is military historian, journalist and ex-reserve officer, Dr. Peter Caddick-Adams. Peter, thank you very much for joining us. So this is unprecedented. Just talk to us. How likely is it, or how frequently would a tanker of this nature be escorted by Russian ships? As I understand it, is allegedly being escorted So this is very odd. I mean, this tanker has been, it was one of the supposedly Venezuelan fleet. I know that 16 of them fled. They went into dark mode, so they couldn't be identified. And then even though some of them were empty, they still fled Venezuela. And I understand that this tanker is empty.
Yes, although as Charlie was saying, what exactly is on board there? I mean, not oil, we know that, but could there be other assets that are of interest to the Americans? And frankly, it's switched its flag because it is going to the Russian flag. So this is the sort of axis link between Venezuela, Russia, Iran. I mean, George W. Bush, when he was president back in the early 2000s, came up with this phrase, the axis of evil. That was, of course, about North Korea as well as Iran and others. But it seems like Venezuela is really part of this axis of countries that seek to do us harm.
Well, it does. But again, tankers are very, very expensive, right? So I imagine that Vladimir Putin, he's obviously suffering. He needs, in terms of how much this war is costing him in Ukraine, I don't suppose he wants to lose another tanker. So perhaps it's something to do with the cost of the tanker and how useful it might be elsewhere. I mean, I don't know, but I can't quite understand.
But the significance here for Britain is, of course, that this operation has been launched, at least in part, from British soil. This is an American operation with American helicopters, American troops, but launching from Britain. Would that have happened without Britain's say-so? Does this drag the Prime Minister into some of this international kerfuffle, for want of a better word, over Venezuela? Suddenly, does it look like Britain is more involved in this operation that the Prime Minister, frankly, wanted to wash his hands of over the weekend?
Well, he tried, didn't he? And I think kerfuffle is exactly the word to describe the sort of behaviour of the Prime Minister. But I have to say that, again, in doing this, Donald Trump is risking his relationship with Vladimir Putin as well, though, isn't he? So I suspect that Britain must have been involved in some form or other, surely, to even allow this ship to be boarded. And as you say, possibly using British bases. But again, Donald Trump has been trying to kind of appease Putin in some ways. But I think, again, the irony of this whole Venezuelan thing is that Putin was breaching the Budapest Memorandum, where he was a signatory, where he said that, oh, well, if there's a problem with Ukraine, we'll sign and protect. And now we see a similar thing with Venezuela and, of course, NATO, with Donald Trump looking at Greenland.
Well, it's a big, big picture, big goings-on. Let's speak to the military historian, journalist and ex-reserve officer, Dr. Peter Caddick-Adams. Peter, sorry to put you on the spot about this breaking news story. What on earth is going on?
No, well, I've been following it too. The speculation is that the tanker is clearly carrying something and it's not oil. Why would the Russians go to extraordinary lengths to reflag the tanker, so change its identity, its name and its ownership, and then escort it with Russian military vessels? And the same, why would a coalition, this isn't just the Americans boarding the tanker, but it's been supported by France, the United Kingdom, all sorts of reconnaissance assets involved in tracking it and then isolating it, and huge resources that have been flown to the United Kingdom and then deployed into the Atlantic with a lot of refueling tankers that have been able to keep them in the air for as long as necessary. This is one that's going to unfold for a while, but it does show us just how weak and tenuous the link between President Trump and President Putin is, because this is firmly the United States treading all over Russian military capability and their pride, and they are a very proud nation. So this will put US and Russian relations back a long way.
Well, could the tanker be carrying any sort of weapons or warheads or anything like that, or is that just far-fetched?
Well, no, it's gone from Iran to Venezuela. Now, we know that in Venezuela there is a Hezbollah, an Iranian drone manufacturing capability there. They established a factory. This is where they've been training offshore militants and also giving them new identities. And then they get reinserted back into Europe and the Middle East. So this is probably... Well, I'm speculating here. This may well be war-making equipment, or it may be drone-making equipment that would have been set up in Venezuela And this is something that US intelligence have been monitoring for quite a while. And Venezuela has always been our sort of weak point in Central and South America in terms of sponsoring terrorism in the wider world.
This really underlines perhaps why the Americans were quite so forceful in their kinetic action on Saturday. That frankly, it's not just about the oil or indeed the dictatorship of Maduro, the stolen elections, but frankly, global terrorism too.
Yeah, Tom, you're absolutely right. These all linked together. So Iran had a dependency on Venezuela. Venezuela also had a dependency on Cuba, taking all their military advisors, President Maduro's personal protection. But in exchange, Cuba sent all their spare medical professionals to Venezuela, where healthcare is very poor. So if you link all of those together and Russia, you've got this chain of 4 nations who are all inextricably linked together. And decisive action in Venezuela has begun to unlink that chain. And this is why one of the reasons why what will happen in Iran in the next few days maybe will be absolutely fascinating. But the ship does provide another insight in that these aren't individual actions. These aren't individual nations playing a single isolationist role. They are all deeply connected. And that's, underlines the fact we are at war with a global terrorist network, Hezbollah, that is not only active in Lebanon, but throughout the world. And this is why they need to be stamped out at source.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Caddick-Adams. He's a military historian, journalist and ex-reserve officer. Joining us now is Defence and Security Analyst Simon Dickens. Simon, what do you think is going on here?
Good afternoon to both. I listened with great interest to what Dr. Peter just said, and I agree with a lot of what he said. It is a very complex world picture at the moment. President Trump had very good reasons why he wanted to go into Venezuela to deal with Maduro and the instability that was being caused from there. And this oil tanker is clearly linked to it. Initially, we thought it was all about sanctioned Venezuelan oil. And President Trump, when he explained what he'd done in Venezuela, made it very clear that was not going to be the last of the issues that was going to be raised. It wasn't just about getting rid of Maduro. It was also about dealing with some of the structural outcomes of Venezuela and where it dealt with. And so it's looking for a change how Venezuela does its business. And Peter's quite right to point out the way in which Venezuela had allowed itself to be used by Iran and by Iran's proxies, by Hamas, by Hezbollah as a training ground. And I didn't know that about also production of drones and everything that went with that as well. So clearly the intention is to deal with it all at once. It's a little bit like Rumsfeld after 9/11, where he kind of he said, sweep it all up at once. And I have a slight sense that that's what's going on at the moment with President Trump. He said, here's an issue, but actually the issues are linked. Let's deal with everything all at the same time. And of course, Hezbollah is still part of the equation in the Middle East, and the search for some kind of a peaceful solution in the Middle East as well. So there's a whole lot going on at the moment, and you rightly highlighted Iran as well and its links. This does look like I won't call it a beginning of the kind of 9/11 revenge, but the sense is everything is linked together. We need to deal with it all at once. And we don't mind if you're President Trump stepping on a few toes. And he's obviously going to be stepping on President Putin's toes over the next couple of days over this ship.
Now, that phrase, sweep it all up at once, such a pertinent one that governed so much of world affairs over the first 15 or so years of this century. And yet, some might say that getting fingers stuck in too many pies was the undoing of the Western alliance. I mean, going for both Iraq and Afghanistan, having all of these different sort of interventions perhaps made them less successful than they would have been had just one been picked. And I wonder, I mean, given that the President of the United States is looking at Venezuela, people are talking about Iran now, there's this Russian tagged, linked vessel that has just been seized, and then you add Greenland into the mix. I mean, can the American security state really sort of keep a tab on all of these different things?
At some point, it's going to run out. And it's interesting that this particular seizure is a joint multinational effort. Exactly at the moment where that's a joint multinational effort around NATO coherence is being threatened at the same time. I think the lesson they will have taken away from is not deal with everything at once, sweep it all together, but don't get stuck doing it. I don't think there was any particular objection to knocking off the Taliban regime in Afghanistan or even knocking over Saddam Hussein. But there was a lot of people at the time also warning the Americans, don't get involved in nation building. There was a very strong lobby inside both the US State Department and the US military saying, we're very good at knocking off leaders, breaking armies, all those good things that they can do. We're not very good at everything that went with it. And they allowed themselves, the Americans, particularly in Iraq, to be led by the nose by people like Ahmed Chalabi, who was an Iraqi exile, who had a very odd view of where Iraq was. His view of Iraq was 10, even 15 years out of date. And I think the danger with the Americans is going to be this, that if they go to a place like Venezuela or even Colombia, whatever, and they get rid of particular leaders, the people who are advising them, the people who are talking to them, will not be telling them what really is going on the ground and in the real mood, because they have been exiles who've been out of the country for many, many years. But the idea of doing all at once, I think, is within the American psyche. But you're also right. There will come a point, there comes a stage where even the most powerful military in the world with the greatest global reach will have a limit on how much it can actually do, particularly so if it decides to irritate its allies as well. And the way in which I think, not illegitimate US security, indeed Western security needs over Greenland have been dealt with is unhelpful. And that's why I'm interested to see what happens with the conversation that's going to take place today between David Lammy and Vice President Vance, and whether Lammy can convince Vice President Vance that US military and security needs can be met in Greenland, as indeed both the Greenland people and the Danish people who actually have got foreign policy responsibility for Greenland said, so they can be met without the annexation, which I think would actually cause a huge split in the alliance and be very, very unhelpful. Indeed, it may even destroy the alliance. I think that's the challenge. So I'm with them in terms of, let's deal with all the ones. But of course, the concern is don't get stuck. Don't get your fingers caught in the mangle. Get in there, sort the problem out, break it if necessary, but then get out again. Whether they can manage that, I think, is moot.
Well, that's the question, isn't it, Simon? Because really and truly, can the rest of the NATO alliance trust working with the United States, given that they are kind of doing the similar pincer move that Russia did to Ukraine?
Yeah, I think that's one of the great challenges we've got. But it seems to me that we still haven't quite bit the bullet on that particular challenge. We're still in a situation where we might crawl our GDP, our defence spending on GDP, up to 2.5% by 2027. We might hit the NATO target of 3.5% on defence by 2035. This doesn't look to me like, despite the rhetoric, despite everything that's going on around, it doesn't look to me as though this government, but also governments of France and other countries within the European side of NATO alliance, actually understand what the situation has changed. Fundamentally changed in terms of the threat force put by Putin, but also fundamentally changed, strategically changed in terms of the response we can expect from the United States. We are still not meeting that rhetoric reality gap.
Really significant stuff there. Simon Diggins, Defence and Security Analyst, thank you very much indeed for your time. Let's return to our national reporter, Charlie Peters, now.
Thanks so much.
Charlie, what more can you tell us about what is happening right now on board that tanker?
Well, on board the tanker, it looks as though United States Special Operations Forces have boarded it using a Little Bird helicopter. And while we've seen a lot of assets depart from the United Kingdom, from RAF Fairford and Mildenhall this morning and indeed over the last couple of days, we're still not sure on where the helicopter that boarded the vessel came from directly. It's possible, Tom and Nana, that all of the noise that we've been seeing from the United Kingdom could have been part of a dramatic misdirection attempt to lure the Marinera, this Russian-flagged tanker, to go towards Iceland instead of the UK. It's highly likely that with all the air assets and the naval assets they gathered in the United Kingdom, they were leading or allowing the Marinera to believe that perhaps Iceland would be a safer route than going closer to the UK. I think what we're seeing here, Tom, is quite similar to the misdirection that the US military deployed before those dramatic strikes on Iran last April. I think actually the asset that finally landed on the Marinera oil tanker should have come from Iceland instead, or indeed from the US Coast Guard vessel that has been tracking it for 2 weeks. But either way, while the boarding took place, some US air assets have been deployed over it that have been deployed from Britain. We've seen AC-130J gunships and also P-8 maritime surveillance aircraft, and also a set of Ospreys that took off from Fairford this morning. And I could also tell you, Tom and Nana, that it appears that this operation, launched by the US military and the Coast Guard, has been conducted in coordination with another seizure of a separate Venezuelan oil tanker in the Caribbean Sea. Now, this is significant because the Marinera fled from the southern Caribbean last month, but we've also seen 16 other vessels in what appeared to be a coordinated attempt to escape from the southern Caribbean blockade, also move towards the North Atlantic. So possibly an example here, what I think this is, Tom and Nara, is the United States trying to sustain its operation by saying to any Venezuelans, Russians, or Iranians who might threaten their operation in Caracas, don't mess with us. We really do mean business, and we haven't stopped here.
So now they've gone on board this ship. How long do you think it will be before we start to find out what exactly is on board? And in your view, what do you think is on there, or what they might be looking for?
Well, there's no oil there, Tom, that's for sure. We don't know what it has on it, though, specifically, because it never boarded in Venezuela. I think there's a realistic possibility it could have been carrying some signature kit and equipment from Hezbollah in Iran, or even some Russian assets towards Venezuela to support them amid that standoff with the United States. The question remains, Tom and Nana, why was Russia so desperate to intervene and protect this ship? Why did they give it its flagging protection? Why did they send off a diplomatic message on New Year's Eve to say to the US, don't board it? Well, the US clearly, and perhaps even the United Kingdom as well, based on our links with the US and the surveillance we've conducted over the ship in the last 4 or 5 days, they clearly think there's something on there that's worth having, or they just want to send a message to the Venezuelans and also to other nations supporting them. Do not try to resist our operation in Caracas.
Really fascinating stuff. Charlie Peters, thank you indeed for being across this story, as you have been for the last 4 or 5 days. Charlie Peters, thanks very much indeed.
All right, it's 26 minutes after 1 o'clock. Protesters are gathering in Westminster to oppose Sir Keir Starmer's deal to hand back the Chagos Islands to Mauritius.
Well, this comes as the Prime Minister suffered a fresh blow to his deal in the House of Lords, with peers defying the government's agreement.
Well, joining us now is GBNews' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, so we're here again. The Chagosian deal is not going smoothly. We spoke to Dame Arlene Foster yesterday. There have been certain amendments that have gone back and forth to and fro from the House of Lords to the House of Commons. Talk to us about what exactly is going on now. Where are we with it?
Sir Keir Starmer, who just a few months ago signed an agreement with Mauritius to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, despite the fact that in the Labour manifesto they said that they would protect all British overseas territory. It's going to cost us $100 million a year for 99 years. Depending on how you do the maths, that could be up to 30 billion or so. A lot of money that we're paying to give away something we have. The government said they had to do it because of an advisory legal ruling, but the one set of people that were not consulted were the Chagosians themselves. Now, I'm joined now by Vanessa Mandarin. Vanessa, thank you very much for talking to us today. You live in London. Your family were booted out of the Chagos Islands. What do you think about what the government are doing at the moment?
The government is wrong by giving away our homeland to Mauritius without consulting the Chagosian, the self-determination, and the British people in general, because British Indian Ocean Territory, Chagos Island, belong for Britain, and we want to remain British. Majority of the British Chagosian want to remain British. At the moment, what Keir Starmer is doing by giving away our homeland and UK contribution billion to a corrupt country like Mauritius, he's weakening our national security, because UK and US, they are friendship together in terms of the UK national security. We don't feel protected. We don't feel protected in the UK if our military base, Diego Garcia, is going in the hand of a small country like Mauritius, who don't have any resources to protect their own environment, and how they will protect their own people and own environment. We don't trust Mauritius. Mauritius is a corrupt country. I've been in Mauritius. I've been targeted all of my life. All those Sagosians who's here today, they fled Mauritius because they've been persecuted. They were harassing them in Mauritius. That's why they fled Mauritius, to seek protection in the UK. And then we have a government who don't protect their own citizens.
Thank you very much. And also now let's talk to Baroness Foster. You laid an amendment the other day. Tell us exactly what's going on in the House of Lords and what your particular concerns are about this.
Well, I was very pleased that the House of Lords voted for 4 out of the 5 amendments, so that will now go back to the House of Commons. Originally, the third reading of the bill was to be today, but it's not now taking place to next Monday, the 12th of January. And I'm hoping that the government are listening to the voices, not just in the House of Lords, but the Chagosians here today. They have a right to self-determination. That has been denied to them. We've heard over this past few days a lot about the rights of the Greenland people to have their own right to self-determination. I absolutely agree with that. So why are we not allowing these people to have their rights of self-determination? It's not just us that are concerned about that. The United Nations Committee on Racial Discrimination have also expressed grave concerns as late as the 8th of December that these people have not been given their rights. So why are the government not giving the Chagosian people their rights of self-determination? These are human rights. There's many reasons to be against this treaty. There's monetary reasons, there's environmental reasons, as Vanessa has said, but the biggest reason of all is that the people who it directly affects have not been asked what they believe, and I think that that is totally wrong, Catherine.
Quite something, isn't it, for a government led by a former human rights lawyer. Donald Trump, well, we know he's a bit busy at the moment, but at the moment, America seem like they're okay with this deal. It's a joint US-UK base on Diego Garcia. Do you have any hope that perhaps America might look at this again and say, actually, let's not do this, considering the state of turmoil that global affairs are in?
Well, absolutely. The world is in a very dangerous place at this moment in time. Geopolitics are all around us. So not just America, but our own government needs to take stock on that, and they need to pause and they need to say, are we doing the right thing? But more than that, are we doing the right thing by our own citizens? And we're not. And that has to be a scandal, and I hope people realise that this is a scandal that is happening here today, and I hope that they listen to the voices of the Chagosian people and give them that referendum, that right of self-determination, which we've given to people in Gibraltar, we've given it to people in the Falkland Islands, rightly so. So why aren't we giving it to the Chagosian people?
Well, Baroness Foster and Vanessa Mandarin, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on GB News. So the Lords have got plenty of changes that they want to make. There's a lot of opposition to this bill. Of course, Labour has a huge majority in the House of Commons, but isn't it interesting that on page 120 of the Labour manifesto, they said that they would protect British overseas territory, and then here they are giving away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. I suppose the government would argue that this is their way of protecting that base, because they say that that original UN judgment, although it was advisory, might at some point have become legally binding, and that would have made things very difficult.
All right, Catherine Foster, thank you very much. And one of those amendments was that we shouldn't have to pay rent if the island cannot be used as a military base. And that seems
so sensible,
perfectly reasonable if that was going to be the case. And of course, these are the oversights that the government appears to be just allowing to go through. I mean, why would you even allow that? We're going to have to pay rent, something that could be useless.
And of course, now the government has delayed the next vote on this. I wonder if they're a little bit worried, if they've underestimated the determination not just of peers in the House of Lords, but of the Chagosian people who have been completely ignored in this process, who were displaced wrongly by Britain back in the 1960s, but also, wrongly, a double crime now by this government today ignoring their wishes about the land that they call home to give it to a country thousands of miles away, Mauritius.
Which has good links with Russia and China. You wouldn't be doing that. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I do find the absolute irony that Sir Keir Starmer was talking about how Greenland is for the people of Denmark. And, you know, he's quite happy to stand on a soapbox saying that. But yet, on the other hand, he's now talking about, you know, the Chagosians, we have to do it because of whatever reasons there are, without consulting the Chagosians. It's just, it's quite a shocker, really.
But because an advisory vote in the United Nations, countries that oppose Britain decided to vote to say that the Chagosian people can't have their homeland, Britain can't have these islands that we've had for hundreds of years, and instead they must go to a different country that is miles away. And was only ever temporarily connected to this through an administrative decision by the then British Empire. I mean, it is so ridiculous that we've got to this point, and that the British government is putting so much time, energy and taxpayers' money into ensuring we give away these islands.
And the whole deal is really, really bad. I mean, why would you give something away, but you're charged for that very thing, and then rent it back? It doesn't even make any sense financially to the British public, and it is our money. And I find it quite shocking that even with that in mind, they're continuing and persisting and pursuing this line, and with the instability of the world at the moment, where we are, they're diminishing the strength and power of what is, I suppose, the British Empire. I have no problem with Britain having an empire. I'm proud to be part of, such a historic thing that occurred where Britain dominated, and now, we kind of step back and other people are becoming emperors, and there are other empires developing. But there's no reason why we should be letting go bits of empire that are of significant importance to us.
Do we want to be a global power or not?
Yeah.
Do we believe in the principles of self-determination or not? It can all get very highfalutin. It can all get... We can talk about this stuff, and it is miles away. It's in the Indian Ocean. I can understand why Keir Starmer made the political decision that voters in Rotherham might not think that this is the top of their agenda, but I think he's underestimated.
He's wrong.
I think he's underestimated what people think right across this country. Not just that there's some sort of romantic imperialism that people in Britain hold, because I don't think that's necessarily true. But I think people just sit there shocked at the fact that the Prime Minister is devoting time, energy and, again, taxpayers' money to this. What a distraction. People can't afford their weekly shop. People are struggling for their rent and their mortgage. And the Prime Minister is talking about islands in the Indian Ocean territory that he is desperate to give away and spend your money giving them away. It is so frustrating.
Well, listen, it's just a bad deal. If it was even a good deal, you might even consider it, but it's the worst deal I've ever heard of. Imagine if I gave away my rental property, but they had to pay me. I'd have to pay for them to take it away. All right, well, listen, stay with us 37 minutes after 1 o'clock. This is GB News.
Yes, our national reporter Charlie Peters can join us now with some more breaking news. Charlie, what do you have for us?
Well, Tom and Nana, I think we can now confirm that the US Army's 160th, so the Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the same unit that was involved in the Caracas deployment, was again deployed today. So a repeat of those same assets, although this time using a so-called Little Bird helicopter based on images that appear to have been captured on board the Marinera tanker as it's been seized by the US military and Coast Guard in the Northern Atlantic. It also appears, just based on sort of open source information, that several assets that departed from the United Kingdom this morning from both RAF, Fairford and Mildenhall were also part of this operation. So the United Kingdom very much a part now of the American military power projection linked to these operations in Caracas over the weekend. Both a P-8 Poseidon, which is a maritime surveillance aircraft, and also 2 AC-130J gunships were involved in the boarding operation, it appears. They have been launched from Mildenhall and Fairford this morning. They were also seen operating earlier in the week in what appeared to be some practice runs and dry runs on this operation around the coast of Northern Ireland, down off the west coast of Scotland. We've also seen, Tom and Nana, this morning and overnight, some very high-value US military aircraft moving up to Scotland, including what appears to be a scheduled arrival into Glasgow Prestwick Airport from the US Air Force's Ramstein base in Germany. So clearly a lot of air power and also potentially some senior US government leadership, potentially from some of their intelligence agencies, moving into the United Kingdom today ahead of that dramatic maritime boarding and seizing operation that has taken place in the North Atlantic in the last hour. It also appears that while they've conducted that operation in the North Atlantic, they have repeated a similar move in the Southern Caribbean, boarding another oil tanker that was trying to escape from their Southern Caribbean blockade. So a lot of dramatic US military and Coast Guard movements right now.
Now, this appears, though, because I'm sort of reading here that these gunships arrived at the airbase on the 4th, I think it was, on Sunday. So there's obviously this plan of what was going on has obviously been in the offing for quite some time. President Trump was obviously not going to let these oil tankers escape. Tell us a bit more about this. Was this? Do you think this was a fully planned operation that had been something that was in the offing for some time?
Yeah, we were discussing this on the weekend with Dawn Neeson on Sunday afternoon, actually, Nana. We were looking at GBNews was tracking the movement of this aircraft, and we've been seeing analysis shared by some open source accounts online, looking at the various bits of movement to the United Kingdom to predict that they could have been used in this operation for this oil tanker, which they have been pursuing for 3 weeks. The Coast Guard have been following this tanker from the Southern Caribbean all the way up to the North Atlantic. We've seen Russia engage very suddenly to try and prevent the interdiction and the seizing of the vehicle. What I think is particularly interesting is while we were all focusing on what was going on in the UK, I think it could have been a bit of a distraction. The US government letting us see what they were doing in Britain, while a lot of movement was taking place in Iceland, where I think that Little Bird helicopter actually deployed from. Although we do know that the AC-130s and those tankers and the P-8 likely came from the United Kingdom, the actual boarding vessel came from Iceland. That's what I'm doing. That's my assessment at this stage. So that was very smart from the US military, because we have seen the tanker moving more and more towards Iceland in the last few days, potentially trying to extend its range beyond the maximum nautical mile range of the US helicopters and Osprey vehicles that they'd had. And we did, an hour and a half ago, the vessel suddenly, very sharply, turning south and going back towards Britain, perhaps having realised it had been drawn into this very clever trap by the US government, who led them to believe that the boarding force would come from Britain with the special operations team arriving there. But actually, it appears they could have been launching from Iceland instead, in the strategically significant naval choke point that is the GI-UK between Iceland and Britain and the Faroe Islands. If they were going to do anything, it was always going to be around that location, and it appears they've...
Charlie, before we let you go, I've got to ask you... Oh, sorry, I think we're breaking up just a little bit there. But if I can, Charlie Peters, this is now a Russian-flagged vessel, and some of the images that have been published online of this boarding operation have been published by the Russian state media organisation RT.
That's right.
I mean, is this... What does this tell us about where Russia is on this? They're clearly wanting to use this as a sort of propaganda tool. What does this say about Russian-American relations?
Well, if it was a propaganda tool, it's hugely embarrassing for the Russians, who sent out a urgent diplomatic request, a formal diplomatic request to the United States on New Year's Eve, the Kremlin telling the US not to seize this tanker, which originally had a Guyanese flag on it. It actually painted the Russian flag on the side of it, the Marinera, as it moved towards the North Atlantic about a week ago. So, look, we don't know what's on that ship, but whatever is there, the Russians don't want the West to know about it. They were very keen to give it Russian protection after it moved from Iran to Venezuela and started being pursued by the US Coast Guard. Now, Tom and Nana, I don't think that's the Kremlin sort of giving Iran a favour. It has moved significant assets and made some diplomatic moves as well to try and prevent US military from boarding this tanker, as they have done so now. And I think there is going to be something on that tanker. We don't know what it is. Potentially some military hardware that was being moved from Iran towards Venezuela amid that standoff with the United States. But I hope very soon, now that the US government has successfully seized it with US Air Force and also the Royal Air Force providing overwatch overhead, we might soon learn why the Russian military and government was so keen to move to such lengths to try and protect this tanker. They failed because the US government now has possession of it. Now we'll see why there was such a fuss about it.
Peters, thank you very much. Well, joining us in the studio is GBNews' political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, so what is the significance of all of this?
Well, it's a Russian-flagged vessel. That's what's significant. When it appeared to change its flag in recent days or weeks, and that's the problem. Well, the tension that will be raised around this vessel. What will Russia do? It's a Russian-flagged vessel. It's been taken by the US Coast Guard. What is a UK involvement? And Charlie Peters has been breaking there on air that UK bases were used. All this happened too late for Prime Minister's questions, and really too late for a briefing with the PM's official spokesman, which broke up within the past 20 minutes. What we're told by Number 10 at this stage is they won't comment on the operational activities of other nations. They repeat that same line. They don't comment on any of these activities. And if it's the UK we're talking about, we're not commenting. There's a lot more road to run on this story. Were UK bases used for this interception? Were we asked? Did it just happen? What is the legality of this? Again, going back to where Keir Starmer starts, he respects international law. Disrespecting international law, if it's a Russian flag vessel, how does Russia respond? It looks like it's trying to go round to the north of Scotland and through the Bering Sea and towards Russia that way. But what is the legality of this? Again, a further grit in the oyster of the special relationship.
But isn't this the difficulty? That Russia has disregarded any sense of international law for years and years and years. Russia has executed people on our soil. Russia has been alleged to have launched cyber attacks against British companies, alleged to have cut communication wires in the North Sea. Why are we fighting with a hand tied behind our back? We're making all of these moves towards international law, saying we can't possibly touch a vessel that's Russian flagged because of international law. And Russia is laughing because Russia doesn't give a fig for international law, never has, never will. Russia invades sovereign countries, attempts to kidnap Zelensky and kills people using nerve agents in this country. I mean, at what point are we being taken for fools by putting such emphasis on international law when our adversaries don't?
I think that point could be approaching, Tom, frankly. And the irony of this conversation is taking place when we are giving away a base in the South Atlantic, the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia, giving away control of that at least for 100 years. We're paying billions, tens of billions of our taxpayers' money to do this, money that could be spent on defence of this nation, because we're concerned about the ruling by an international court back in 2018, 2019. The point the Tories tell us is they started the talks with Mauritius over Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands, so they would never get anywhere, just keep talking and talking and talking. It's what diplomats do all their lives, and then they retire. That was the idea with the Chagos Islands. It wasn't meant to be brought to a head, but of course it looks like Keir Starmer's observing international law. But why are we giving away a bait? Why are we doing this?
No,
I mean, look to your point, exactly. Why on earth is this happening?
Well, it's the same if you look at what was going on in Israel with Hamas. Hamas obviously disregarded international law, yet we place such emphasis on Israel to follow it. So we will look like absolute hypocrites if we then sort of swerve. But on your point about the Chagos, Keir Starmer made such a thing about the people in Greenland having their own self-determination. But yet with the Chagosians, he doesn't seem that bothered about that.
Yes, quite right. I want to clarify something I said earlier from Charlie Peters, my colleague. This ship did change its flag mid-voyage to become Russia, but it's not technically a Russian ship.
They painted it on, didn't they?
Yeah, but under UN laws at sea, it's technically stateless. So that could be the narrow head of the pin upon which that avoids a confrontation with Russia.
Could it
possibly.
be a distraction, though, as well? I mean, whatever that is, because the ship is empty, we don't know what's on it, but there are other ships heading elsewhere. They've put they've put the tankers in dark mode, and we haven't found all the 16 tankers that left Venezuela.
No, and the reports of a second ship being seized also elsewhere in the globe. But as Charlie Peters is saying here, it is not technically a Russian ship. Legally, it's been sanctioned since 2024 for links to Hezbollah. So that could be the way we avoid a real issue with Russia.
And yet, interesting then that Russia itself has made warnings towards the United States saying, don't board this. Russia wants people to think of it as a Russian ship. It wants people to think of it as a Russian ship, even if the UN might not recognise it as a Russian ship. I mean, is this more Russia stirring the pot, wanting to sort of muddy the water, as so often Russian foreign policy does, to try and perhaps absolve them of their actions by making it look like the Americans do similar things?
Yes. I mean, it does weaken the attempt to condemn Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, to lecture China, as the PM will do when we expect to go to China later this month, over ambitions towards Taiwan. There was a huge military exercise around Taiwan by Chinese forces over the New Year period. So the point, I think the world is changing. We have a legally minded Prime Minister who built his life within that legal architecture, who's now finding that architecture falling around him, and it's how he responds to that. And I just wonder whether the Chagos Islands could be the UK response. Is this the time to be giving away control of those islands? But the base, of course, is asked for 100 years with the US. But really, is now the time?
It isn't. It really isn't. I mean, look, Christopher Hope, I know you'll be back and forth on this one. But let's go to the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major Chip Chapman. Chip, thank you very much for joining us. This feels like a game. Do you remember that game Battleships, where you put you probably don't.
I know, I've played the game Battleships.
This feels like a game of Battleships. Chip, in your mind, what do you see as going on?
Well, I think you have to look through the prism of Venezuela and the shadow fleet from Venezuela taking oil. That's the first prism. So a number of all the Venezuelan oil has really been sanctioned by the US over the past years. Unfortunately for Venezuela, a number of the tankers which are being used to take the Venezuelan oil, they still have about 1 million barrels a month sort of coming out, are moved by a sort of parallel fleet that it takes the exports from India, from Venezuela and Russia, and takes them to India, China, and other places. So it's a covert network of aging tankers. Now, these tankers actually are part of what we call sometimes the grey or dark fleet. They do have opaque ownership. They do operate under flags of convenience. And they do also change who their sort of ownership is. And that's where the Russians will distance themselves from this, I think, ultimately. Now, it's interesting from the Russian perspective on this, because the American operation in Venezuela, the Russians have said is an act of armed aggression and a gross violation of international law and Venezuelan sovereignty. Now, that might seem sort of, calling the kettle black in terms of what they've done in Ukraine, but that's the way they've seen it. The problem for Russia, if you put it through a Russian prism rather than a Venezuelan prism, is that Russia was Venezuela was Russia's main ally in Latin America. They've had no military deployment or mobilization. They've had no tangible support for Maduro's remaining loyalists. And so this could really backfire on Russia, even if this ship were not technically now Russian, in the sense that can Putin continue to not annoy Trump while conceding nothing, both on Ukraine and on issues like this? At some point, he may not be able to do both. And the fact that yesterday in Paris, we had the single unified security architecture signed by America as well as the European countries, UK and France, this leaves Putin really on a horns of a dilemma for the future about what he does in responding to what came out yesterday in Paris and also responding to this incident itself.
The scale of what is happening across the world as we speak is frankly gargantuan. Can America keep all of these plates spinning at once?
Well, it depends how many plates you have, and there's always a difficulty, and they could have themselves imperial overstretch if they were go towards a sort of insane notion of trying to annex Greenland and Canada and Mexico and operations in Colombia and things like that at the same time. Now, all those in terms of simultaneity are not likely to happen.
Right.
So there's always a dilemma with that and the sequencing of how you do operations. But I think what it shows is the reach and capability of the Americans. And there's no way the Brits weren't involved in this, and I can tell you for why. One of the big
that
things
is the crucial question that will be continuing into the next hour of the programme. But Chip Chapman, I'm afraid we've run to the end of this segment. Thanks indeed for joining us. This is indeed Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Yes, lots more coming up on today's show. Do not go anywhere. We'll keep you updated with this breaking news situation. But first, let's get an update with what's happening in the weather around the country.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Staying cold today, showers for some, but actually bright for many with some sunshine coming through. We are in between weather systems at the moment, one low departing. That brought some rain, sleet and snow during Tuesday. Another frontal system starting to move in. This is going to bring some rain later on. But ahead of that, we're going to see plenty of sunny spells for many. One exception continues to be the northeast of Scotland, where some significant snow showers will continue to build up in the far northeast. Meanwhile, it's going to be feeling cold with a brisk breeze and temperatures of 4 to 6 Celsius fairly widely, lower than that over snow-covered parts of northern UK. And we're going to see a continued build-up of snow for some parts of Caithness, Orkney, as well as the northeast of Aberdeenshire. But these showers will be very localised. We'll see mostly clear conditions elsewhere as we end the afternoon and go into the evening. Exception being Northern Ireland, West Wales and the southwest, where cloud will arrive. And these outbreaks of rain, a few flakes of snow associated with this over higher parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps Wales, but mostly this is rain, and it's patchy rain. It's going to fizzle away overnight, but it will bring a lot of cloud in, and that cloud will mean that many places will be frost-free, particularly towards central and western parts of the country. The frost confined mostly to the east, with temperatures dipping below freezing and a few icy patches first thing. Now, Thursday starts with that cloud cover, but it will brighten up in the east, and that's where we keep mostly dry and bright weather through the day. Meanwhile, rain arrives into the southwest, some heavy rain, strengthening winds as well. They could be an issue in the far southwest, but the main concern is the snow across Wales and the Midlands.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello from the Aurora Collection Resort here in Lapland. We're on an amazing Arctic adventure to celebrate our greatest cash giveaway, a simply stunning £85,000. And in 2026, we're giving you the chance to win it all.
For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 9th of February 2026. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 7th of January. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua. The American military have seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker after a weeks-long Atlantic pursuit in an operation that could heighten tensions with Moscow.
If we went as far as a legal instrument to deploy, which would be necessary, I would then have a debate in this House so all members could know exactly what we're doing, make their points of view, and then we would have a vote in this House on the issue.
The Prime Minister tells the House of Commons Britain is committed to sending a peacekeeping force to Ukraine after any ceasefire, and says MPs will get a vote before British troops are deployed.
The Tories demand that the Prime Minister comes forward earlier than that to debate the issue of boots on the ground in Ukraine. And what will be the terms of that debate? And when will that vote be held? Lots of questions.
If we went as far as a legal instrument to deploy, which would be necessary, I would then have a debate in this House so all members could know exactly what we're doing, make their points of view, and then we would have a vote in this House on the issue.
The Prime Minister tells the Commons that Britain is committed to sending a peacekeeping force to Ukraine after any ceasefire, and says that MPs will get a vote before UK troops are deployed.
Labour accused of killing off rural pubs in other news as ministers move to slash the drink-drive limit so that 1 pint could put drivers over the limit and under the law. Well, critics warn it's another blow to country life, while Labour insists it's all about road safety.
We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland.
And Donald Trump doubles down, and the White House confirms that the United States is considering all options, including military force to acquire Greenland, sparking fury in Europe and fresh questions over the future of NATO.
The big freeze continues. Schools closed, travel chaos, and Storm Goretti is incoming with 20 centimetres worth of snow.
Well, as the cold snap continues here in Stoke, amber weather alerts are issued for snow for parts of the Midlands tomorrow. I'll bring you all the details.
I just felt something there for Jack Carson. He sounded like he had a really blocked nose from all the cold.
Well, it does. It is blooming freezing. Why have we had such a terrible start to the year? The world's on fire, we've got war everywhere, and on top of it all, it's really, really cold.
Oh, I know. Do you know, today, as I walked along the path, I was holding my little son Ivory's hand, and we both went skidding, went, oh, my goodness, this is slippery. Ivory, hold on. And we both went down our path together. Just both feet on
in Paris yesterday. I mean, literally on compacted snow.
Yeah.
But it looks beautiful. A huge 40-foot Christmas tree, decorations all still up in Paris, covered in snow. It was an amazing experience there in the Élysée Palace.
Christopher, I saw you slightly complaining about the provisions for journalists outside number 10 compared to the Élysée Palace, because what do they, even though it's cold right there in the courtyard, there's an entire complex for
Yes,
you.
a salle de presse, which is a press room in my humble French, and in there there was a baby table football table. There was a darts board, there was a table tennis table, a free espresso machine, a fridge for storing, you know, maybe a glass of Chianti of an evening, a big food machine. If I'm outside number 10, which I love being outside number 10 for your show and for others, I can't even use the loo in the buildings opposite me, number 9, 10, 11 down street. I've been told we can't use those loos unless there's a briefing of lobby journalists. So I have to run away. I mean, I just felt a bit hard done by giving the support offered to French journalists. But there we are.
I sometimes think that we need to petition the government to create some sort of... Because, you know, opposite the White House, you've got all these plug-in points, you've got tents on the South Lawn. College Green, opposite the House of Commons, where very often there are tents and everything. I mean, there isn't really a permanent structure.
No.
I mean, there could be. It's above a car park.
Yes, there could be. It's owned, but it's actually controlled by the House of Parliament, so that the Speaker would allow that, or the Black Rod, who controls security in Parliament. There was, for about a year, there was large stands there during the Brexit dramas. I mean, they there all the time as we played out in Parliament.
I was doing a lot of commentary at that time, so I kept going to the various tents, whether it was BBC or Sky or whatever it was. And as the protesters were holding up their protest signs, the tents themselves grew. They became platforms and stages, and the protesters got signs on sticks and were waving the sticks to get into them.
I'm sure it's very entertaining for our viewers who don't really care whether you're freezing cold. They want them.
I agree. No, I think that they and nor should they care. Poor old Jack Carson there freezing.
Anyway, spoiled journalists, as I say. Well, listen, send us your thoughts, your comments, gbnews.com/your say, or you can scan the QR code on the screens right now. But first, your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you. The top stories. The US is attempting to seize a Venezuela-linked oil tanker after a more than 2-week-long pursuit across the Atlantic, which is travelling off British waters. According to reports this afternoon, Number 10 has said it would not comment on any speculation or the uses of British military bases by third parties. A US official has told Reuters news agency that the seizure is being carried out by the Coast Guard and military. Russian state news media outlet RT is also reporting that a helicopter believed to be carrying US military forces is attempting to land on the oil tanker. The seizure, which could stoke tensions with Russia, came after the tanker, originally known as the Bella 1, avoided a US maritime blockade of sanctioned tankers and rebuffed earlier US Coast Guard efforts to board it off Venezuela in December. The US pursuit of the tanker comes after the Trump administration's weekend raid on Venezuela, which led to the removal and capture of its then president, Nicolas Maduro. Elsewhere, Sir Keir Starmer says a vote would be held in the House of Commons on deploying troops to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. It says the UK, Ukraine and France signed a declaration of intent to deploy forces to Kyiv in the event of such a deal.
No Prime Minister, Labour or Conservative, has failed to make a statement to the House in person after committing to the deployment of British troops. His comments about making a statement in due course, quite frankly, are not good enough. It shows a fundamental lack of respect for all of us here and the people we represent.
If there were to be deployment, there would have to be a legal instrument. Mr. Speaker, deployment would only be after a ceasefire to support Ukraine's capabilities, to conduct deterrent operations and to construct and protect military hubs. Mr. Speaker, there will be a statement to the House at the earliest opportunity. if there were a decision to deploy under the agreement that was signed yesterday, then I would put that matter to this House for a debate beforehand and for a vote on that deployment. That is consistent with recent practice, and I'll adhere to that.
Donald Trump threatened to use military force to take over Greenland, claiming the move is necessary to ensure national security. European leaders and the Greenland Prime Minister have issued warnings to the US President after he doubled down on his threats to take the territory. Sir Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, said if Donald Trump were to attack Denmark, then it would signal the demise of a large part of NATO. The US President has been vocal about his desire to annex the self-governing island. Nigel Farage has announced that Layla Cunningham will be Reform UK's candidate for the next London mayoral elections and the party's campaign figurehead in the capital for upcoming local elections. The Reform UK leader made the announcement standing in front of banners which read "London needs reform" at a central London press conference today. Mr Farage described May's local devolved elections as the single most significant set of electoral tests in this country between now and the general election. He also said he would announce the leader of Reform UK Scotland at an upcoming press conference in Edinburgh next week. A major supplier of small boats and engines believed to be used in thousands of channel crossings to the UK has been jailed for 11 years and fined more than £346,000. 45-year-old Turkish national Adam Savas was arrested after arriving at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam in November of 2024 and stood trial in Belgium. He was accused of supplying engines and boats to people smugglers, shipping the boats from Turkey and storing them in Germany until they were transported to northern France. 3 other defendants were sentenced to 12 and 13 years in prison, and their arrests have been ordered. And a bus filled with school children has crashed into a ditch after slipping on black ice as 9 other children were injured in a separate crash. Pictures show the double-decker bus nose first down and opening off the side road in Ashford in Kent. There were no injuries here, but elsewhere 9 children were injured after a school coach and bus crashed in Reading. 8 adults from the bus also suffered minor injuries. It wasn't known if the crash was related to the weather affecting the country. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is a very busy evening, or even afternoon. I said afternoon. The show's actually called Good Afternoon, Britain, isn't it? Well, we're going to go to that breaking news. The United States military has seized the Marinera oil tanker linked with Venezuela.
Well, joining us now is GB News' national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what more can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you now that the Department of Homeland Security had the command of this operation, supported by the US military. So this was a central government operation conducted by the US Coast Guard, of course, and then support from US Special Operations. And we've also seen the United States Air Force involved. At this stage, though, Tom and Nana, it appears it was a joint operation involving not only the seizure of this tanker in the North Atlantic, but also with another in the Southern Caribbean. We're still awaiting details on that, but it appears to be a coordinated joint effort, which could be part of a wider US strategy to sustain its strategic efforts in the Southern Caribbean, in Venezuela, essentially acting as a warning to Venezuelans who might be resisting their operation to take Nicolas Maduro, but also Chinese, Russians, and Iranians who are interested by it, saying that we are set on ensuring our control. And if you do try and take tankers away, we will seize and interdict them. 16 vessels appear to have fled from this southern blockade in the last 2 days. And this action may be the start of several we could see coming up shortly by the US government to make sure that those vessels return to US control, or at least are not able to return to their ports. Other reports we're getting now appear to suggest that the US military and Coast Guard on board did not face any resistance and completed the operation to seize the location very quickly indeed. And at this stage, I can tell you now that the Marinera oil tanker, which has been going through the Atlantic for 2 weeks, appears to be plotting a course towards Great Britain. It's heading towards Scotland at this stage. So we don't know where it will end up. The US government has just seized it. It will have required British sign-off, considering many of the assets were launched from RAF bases in Gloucestershire and also in Suffolk as well. But they'll need to take it now to a port nearby. That could be a port in the United Kingdom, Tom and Nana. It could go to Liverpool, perhaps a deep-sea port nearby, or one of the naval bases around Glasgow or in Scotland, potentially. But we don't know where it's going to go next. But it is currently plotting a course towards the United Kingdom under US government control. And this is a vessel that left from Iran in August, heading towards Venezuela. I doubt they packed the right clothes for a January in Scotland or indeed the North Atlantic, those on board that vessel. So they're certainly in for a rude awakening when the little bird of the US military landed on the back of that vessel in the last hour or so. But at this stage, it does appear to have total control of the US government. This will now raise further questions for Sir Keir Starmer. It does appear, based on the movement we've seen since Sunday, that the UK was fully aware of this upcoming operation and did appear to support it. We've seen RAF vessels, RAF aircraft, from Lossiemouth and also from Maidenhall deploying as part of the wider surveillance operation in the North Atlantic over the last 3 days. We've also seen French and Irish aircraft conducting that surveillance. But the more prescient political question now for the British government, and for Keir Starmer in particular, Tom and Nana, is how much support do they have for this move? They've been sitting on the fence very much on the Caracas operation with Nicolas Maduro. What do they do now? How close are they to supporting this US action, particularly amid the dispute that the two countries are in over Greenland and over further action elsewhere? So very much a difficult and tense moment for Sir Keir Starmer. But we also turn our attention, Tom and Anna, to what's on that ship. Because if it was going from Iran to Venezuela and then desperately sought the protection of the Kremlin with it becoming a Russian flagged vessel during the transit, and also with it painting the Russian flag on the side of the ship during the process, it does suggest that there's something on board that ship that Russia desperately does not want Western nations to know about. I should say, on the discussion about the legality of the strike, this is a ship that's been under sanctions since 2024 for links to Hezbollah, and also because it changed its flag during the voyage. Under the UN laws at sea, it is technically stateless. So Russia can say what it likes about it now being on its registry of ships. According to the letter of the law, that is a stateless ship, and that will very much limit the diplomatic posturing that Russia can claim at this moment, and also will help on the legal case for the US should the UK seek to defend its actions if Keir Starmer is willing to make that step.
Charlie, before we let you go, reports now that the United States is seizing a second tanker, this time in the Caribbean.
Yes, as we were saying earlier, it looks like it was a coordinated operation with both the North Atlantic seashore and the Southern Caribbean. Yeah, as we've been reporting over the last hour, it does appear to be a coordinated move by the US Coast Guard because they have 16 vessels who fled from the Southern Caribbean blockade they put in. That is a clear challenge to the US strategy in Venezuela. If they are going to sustain their strategic end state, which is that Venezuela is essentially under total US control, then these very symbolic and very powerful symbols of resistance to US control very much need to be stopped. And so I think that this first seizure in the Southern Caribbean we're seeing right now, Tom, will very quickly be followed by several more, because there are 15 other vessels on the run from that blockade. They appear to make a coordinated escape a couple of days ago with the New York Times satellite team tracking those movements. We will see what happens next, but I'd be very surprised if these seizures were the end of it.
If this is all about that control of Venezuela operation, this is the British bases that have been complicit in this operation, despite the Prime Minister's ambiguity of whether or not the operation in Venezuela was legal or right or backed by Britain. By extension, we are now somewhat involved in it.
Of course. Directly involved with it, Tom and Nana, not just in terms of the bases being used, but also in terms of some of the assets deployed. We've seen the RAF flying aircraft over that, being part of the maritime surveillance efforts. That's almost certainly what they've been involved with. And I think that's crucial because the North Atlantic is Britain's domain. The P-8 aircraft that are in RAF Lossiemouth in Scotland are there to deter and track Russian submarine activity in the North Atlantic. It's absolutely the case, based on what we've seen so far, that is what they have been doing in the last couple of days, checking to see if Russia does send over submarines or other vessels to protect this tanker coming through the North Atlantic. And just finally, based on what we've seen so far in terms of the Little Bird landing on the back of that tanker, a very small Special Forces helicopter, and all the assets we saw training in RAF Fairford, we've seen Special Forces operators, we've seen Osprey aircraft, very much larger, much more effective aircraft preparing. Based on the fact that they've gone for this smaller helicopter much sooner, it suggests to me, Tom and Nana, that they rushed this operation today in the middle of the day rather than at the dead of night or at dawn, which would be more typical for a seizure. They've done it now before any Russian naval assets could arrive to protect and escort that ship. That's my assessment based on why they've gone for that decision this quickly.
All right, thank you very much. That's Charlie Peters, GB News' national reporter. Well, joining us now is the former British Army officer, Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mayle. Simon, thank you very much for joining us. So, in your view, because obviously you are very, very experienced, what do you think is happening and how should we, the UK, respond?
Well, the operation itself, I would say for the experts, is relatively simple. From that point of view, as long as you've got helicopters within striking distance, it's an unarmed it's an unarmed ship. It's got a civilian crew on it. There was never really any chance there was going to be any resistance at all. There may be a legal position for the crew. They may be, subject to legal, etc. The key, of course, is the complexity. And I think even when we last had a conversation now, what I said in these situations is always, you've got to get yourself a bigger map. And I don't mean you in particular, but this is all very much part of American-Chinese competition over in the Pacific, South China Sea. It's very, very much to do with Iran and Iran's relationship with Venezuela. And it's quite clearly to do with Russia and Ukraine, because Russia has been supporting its actions in Ukraine through the use of what's prosaically known as the Dark Fleet, of which this is one, probably two ships now, according to your commentator in the Caribbean, that has been shuffling oil from Iran, from Venezuela, around, selling it at a discount, and feeding the Russian war machine. And so it is much of a muchness. And although people can be bitching or complaining about the sort of language that the likes of Trump are using, step back and have a look at people, particularly in America, who do view this from a very global position. And this is a part in a very, very complex global jigsaw that the Americans appear to be now getting more aggressive on compared to what they've allowed to happen over the last few years.
So, Simon, how does this tie in to what the Americans have been saying about any peace deal with Ukraine? I mean, from a sort of third-party observer position, it has looked like the Trump administration had been trying to be a lot warmer towards Vladimir Putin, trying to bring him in from the cold, trying to get him agree to a peace. And yet now, seizing a Russia-flagged vessel, even if the UN doesn't recognise it as Russian, I mean, that seems contrary to a lot of the narrative, at the very least, that we'd heard about the Trump administration's position via Ukraine.
Well, from that point of view, I'd say, Tom, that's rather encouraging. I think many of us have been slightly dismayed sometimes about the sort of yo-yo attitude of the American leadership right at the top to Russia and Ukraine, and rather felt that Ukraine is being portrayed not as the victim, but as some sort of, the perpetrator of their own misfortune at the moment. I think Russia will saber rattle, but as you say, their position is very weak. They're in a part of the Atlantic that is dominated by NATO, and particularly your reference, of course, to the British element of that. I don't think the Prime Minister will have any problems on this particular issue, because, as your correspondent so well laid out, the legal position is very clear. But it is, as I say, where Sir Keir Starmer has an issue is, of course, it is a wider part of a wider global reposturing by the Americans. But I think it's long overdue that America made it very clear that that Russia is the perpetrator of the war in Ukraine, and we've got to find ways of making Russia, I say pay for that, come to the negotiating table. It's in a fragile state at the moment. It's totally dependent on oil exports, in many ways energy, and this may be another way of sending a very strong message there, in Beijing, in Tehran, and obviously in Caracas.
Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mayle, thank you very much as a former British Army officer. Interesting, isn't it, Putin going on about international law when it suits him? As if,
he knows exactly what he's doing.
Of course he does,
yeah.
But I just find it ironic that people start quoting it when it's in their best interest.
Yeah. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come. Yes, a major blow to people smugglers as a key supplier of small boats used in channel crossings is jailed for 11 years.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2. Now, Turkish national Adem Savas has been jailed for 11 years after supplying boats and engines to people smugglers, helping migrants cross the English Channel.
Well, joining us now to give us more detail on that story is GB News' national reporter, Will Godley. So, Will, what can you tell us about this?
Well, Tom, Nana, good afternoon. Yeah, Adam Savas described by authorities as one of the most significant suppliers of small boats to these people smuggling gangs who operate in the English Channel. At one point, he supplied half of the boats used back in 2023. And since then, he has been subject to an across-Europe investigation to bring him to justice, as authorities believe he profited millions of pounds through people smuggling, selling these boat parts, engines, hulls, and also life jackets to people smugglers in northern France. And today, those authorities from throughout Europe, led by the National Crime Agency, have brought him to justice, sentenced in a Belgian court to 11 years in prison and also fined £346,000 after he admitted in court that he was guilty of supplying people smugglers with small boats parts for 5 years between 2019 and 2024 when he was arrested, and also for being part of an organised criminal gang. Well, he was also in court with 3 co-defendants, and earlier on this afternoon, the National Crime Agency reacted to this verdict.
It's a significant sentencing for those individuals. It sends a clear message to individuals that are involved in this type of criminality that the National Crime Agency and other organisations will go across borders in order to pursue high-value targets that are responsible for the supply of small boats equipment and the misery that they peddle in relation to some of the deaths that we've seen in the Channel over the past years. I think it sends a clear message to criminal networks. However, this is only one line of effort. We will work across boundaries, we will work with other organisations in order to dismantle and deter individuals from making those crossings.
The National Crime Agency reacting earlier on today. They, of course, worked on this investigation with Belgian and Dutch authorities as they dismantled this gang which worked across Europe. They bought cheap supplies from China, boat supplies that were never intended for channel crossings. They would then ship them to Turkey before bringing them into Europe through Bulgaria, driving them to Germany when they were stored in a warehouse before selling them to people smugglers in northern France, where they were then used to smuggle illegal migrants into Britain. Well, that man, Adam Savas, today sentenced to 11 years. Of course, he was arrested back in 2024, and the National Crime Agency admitting that this isn't a silver bullet to smashing those gangs, but does go some way to deter criminal gangs from acting in the way he did. The government this afternoon have also reacted to this verdict, saying their new Borders Act, law enforcement now have strengthened powers to intercept, detain and arrest people smugglers faster, restoring order and control to our borders. And interestingly, this afternoon we've seen the first case where somebody has been arrested under that new legislation. A man has been charged with endangering others during a sea crossing. That man is an 18-year-old man, Aman Nassari, according to His Majesty's courts and tribunals. That news in this afternoon as today's verdict from the Belgian courts. Adam Savas, a 45-year-old Turkish man sentenced to 11 years for being described as a kingpin of smuggling in the English Channel.
All right, thank you very much, Will Godley. Very interesting. This guy has been really... he'd been sending a lot of these boats, selling a lot of these boats. There was a video that showed boxes of boats that were controlled by him and his associates, and they were piled high in a warehouse.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot of... it's shocking. And when you think about small boats, you don't think about all the other sort of industries around it, because it is an industry, isn't it? Ultimately, it's a business model.
Although I do think the government always ignores what the customer is in this business model. They pretend that people are being smuggled against their will, but the reason there's an industry that grows up around this and people get rich, trafficking and selling boats and all the rest of it, is because there are lots and lots of people who want to get to Britain. They're not being smuggled. They want to make the journey, and they pay through the nose to make the journey.
And why? Because of the incentives. When you get here, you absolutely will be housed, you'll be looked after, you'll be given clothes, you'll be given a little bit of money, not much, but enough. You won't have to pay for rent or accommodation.
Oh, and on top of the money that you're given, you'll probably work for some company illicitly,
yeah, of course.
and you'll illegally work, and you'll make money on top of the free money you get.
And it takes years, so you won't be going back. And let's be honest, about 90% of the people who come here and apply stay, so you've got a pretty good chance of staying. And if you don't, if you do get kicked out, you can just stay and appeal and appeal and appeal, and we'll carry on paying for those appeals until eventually you've been here for so long that you can just stay anyway.
Oh, joyful. Well, this is allegedly good afternoon, Britain, but I think at the moment it's bad afternoon,
Well, you've
Britain.
got nothing to lose, have you?
Well, lots more still to come on today's programme.
Yes, we'll be bringing more live coverage as the American military has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker after a dramatic Atlantic pursuit.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Staying cold today, showers for some, but actually bright for many with some sunshine coming through. We are in between weather systems at the moment, one low departing. That brought some rain, sleet and snow during Tuesday. Another frontal system starting to move in. This is going to bring some rain later on. But ahead of that, we're going to see plenty of sunny spells for many. One exception continues to be the northeast of Scotland, where some significant snow showers will continue to build up in the far northeast. Meanwhile, it's going to be feeling cold with a brisk breeze and temperatures of 4 to 6 Celsius fairly widely, lower than that over snow-covered parts of northern UK. And we're going to see a continued build-up of snow for some parts of Caithness, Orkney, as well as the northeast of Aberdeenshire. But these showers will be very localised. We'll see mostly clear conditions elsewhere as we end the afternoon and go into the evening. Exception being Northern Ireland, West Wales and the southwest, where cloud will arrive. And these outbreaks of rain, a few flakes of snow associated with this over higher parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps Wales, but mostly this is rain, and it's patchy rain. It's going to fizzle away overnight, but it will bring a lot of cloud in, and that cloud will mean that many places will be frost-free, particularly towards central and western parts of the country. The frost confined mostly to the east, with temperatures dipping below freezing and a few icy patches first thing. Now, Thursday starts with that cloud cover, but it will brighten up in the east, and that's where we keep mostly dry and bright weather through the day. Meanwhile, rain arrives into the southwest, some heavy rain, strengthening winds as well. They could be an issue in the far southwest, but the main concern is the snow across Wales and the Midlands.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the A92 northbound between Lochgelly and Kirkcaldy, lane 1 is blocked by a broken down vehicle. In Welshpool, the A458 is affected both ways by an incident around Church Street and the Cross, with local diversions. On the A1M southbound between Junction 44 and Junction 42 near Leeds, an overturned vehicle is closing one of 4 lanes, with delays around 20 minutes. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound entry slip at Junction 14 is shut after an overturned vehicle. And on the trains, Elna says do not travel between Edinburgh and Aberdeen, with cross-country disruption on the same route. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Fast approaching 37 minutes after 2 o'clock. Back to the breaking news. The US military has seized the Marinara oil tanker linked with Venezuela.
Well, joining us now for an update on what has been happening over the course of the last few hours is our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you now that it was a coordinated US government effort led by the Department of Homeland Security with support from US military units in both the North Atlantic and also in the southern Caribbean, in the Caribbean Sea, because not only has the US government seized and boarded the Marinara tanker in the North Atlantic, it has also successfully said that it has seized the MT Sophia, another what they're describing as a stateless, sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker without incident. That was the seizing they took in operation in the south this morning. They said that it was a pre-dawn action. So very much linking up and coordinating with the US military efforts in the North Atlantic as well. Now, it appears, based on military flight patterns this morning and also what we're seeing from the Royal Air Force over the North Atlantic, it's highly likely that the United Kingdom was closely involved in that operation in the North Atlantic because many of the US assets involved actually came out of RAF bases, and that also it appears that RAF maritime surveillance jets, such as the P-8, the Poseidon from RAF Lossiemouth, was deployed overhead at the time, likely looking for any Russian vessels that could have been approaching to support and escort this Marinera tanker. Just to take a step back and look at the wider picture here, why have they gone in to seize it? Well, in August, this tanker left Iran and went through to Venezuela, arriving in December. There was an attempted boarding by the United States Coast Guard at that time, but the vessel resisted it and then fled towards the North Atlantic. It has been pursued by the US Coast Guard since then. And on Sunday, after the dramatic raid in Caracas, when Nicolas Maduro was abducted from his own bedroom along with his wife, we saw at least 10 C-17 cargo planes arriving in the United Kingdom's RAF Fairford and Mildenhall, carrying what appeared to be the same sort of helicopters used in the Venezuelan raid into the United Kingdom. We've also seen US Special Forces practicing raiding and fast roping drills. We've seen V-22 Ospreys, another Special Forces aircraft, practicing over the east of England, off the coast of Suffolk as well. So all the evidence was there, all the indicators and warnings that the United States was preparing to board and seize this tanker. But where was the final move launched from? It's possible, I think, Tom and Nana, that they launched from Iceland instead, because that vessel, the Marinera, was tracking towards Iceland, having seen, as we all saw, I assume, the military build-up in Britain. They did not want to be close to the United Kingdom. They wanted to get away from the maximum range of those helicopters and those Osprey vehicles, which is about 500 nautical miles. But it appears that while all eyes were on Britain, the United States could have moved some of those assets into Iceland, because a Little Bird helicopter, very much on the smaller side of the assets available to the Specialist Aviation Regiment involved, that was the final piece of equipment that landed onto the Marinera tanker earlier today at around 11:30 our time. So that tanker being boarded, and it's on its way right now towards the United Kingdom. We don't know where the US government intends to take this tanker. We don't know if it's been given clearance to be held at a deep sea port in Britain. It certainly was never meant to be heading towards Great Britain. It appeared to be going towards Russia, but it could soon arrive at a port in the UK under the protection of the US and the British armed forces, and indeed the police involved then as well, we expect. But a big question is going to be now on the Russian reaction. It was very clear that Russia did not want the West to get access to this vessel. They made quite extraordinary diplomatic moves to prevent it. For what was a stateless oil tanker moving from Iran to Venezuela, seemingly with no link to Russia whatsoever, their sudden moves on New Year's Eve to make a formal diplomatic request from the Kremlin to Washington to say, do not take this tanker. One key warning that what is on that vessel is more than has been reported at this stage. It certainly hasn't got any oil on it, Tom and Nana. It was heading to Venezuela to pick up oil. Didn't pick up any of that because it was blocked by the Coast Guard. So we could soon find out why the US government has been so eager to detain and seize this tanker. What was it carrying?
Exactly. Good question, Charlie Peters. Thank you very much. That is the big question. I can't wait to find out what that is. He's our GB News national reporter. Well, joining us now is military historian Dr. Robert Lyman. So, Robert, we were talking that this is like a sort of game of battleships, isn't it? Only we shouldn't be excited by this, but it is slightly excitable. What is going on?
It is quite extraordinary, and it's a little bit like a game of battleships. Here we have international events, international diplomacy, actually reducing itself to a ship in the mid-Atlantic. And the drama around it is extraordinary at a number of levels. One is the grabbing of the ship by American Special Forces, and the other is the international ramifications of that. But it's reflective of what's going on, of course, with regard to Venezuela and the global debates about whether this is legal or illegal, and indeed whether we should support, whether we in the global and collective sense support what Donald Trump is doing. What Donald Trump is clearly doing is in what he perceives to be his country's national interest, and he's right to do that, whatever we think of it. The reality is here, with a ship in mid-Atlantic, is you could have all sorts of crazy ramifications. It's quite clear to me the United States were very keen to get this ship before a Russian frigate or destroyer turned up, because otherwise we might have had an exchange of shots. So it was very, very important that happened. I'm also suspicious about the ship itself. I know that it's a sanction buster, but why were they so desperate to get away? It's simply not a matter of the crew saving themselves. It's just another sanctioned ship. I think there might be something that we don't know about in terms of what it's carrying. But the other thing to bear in mind is there has been some talk about this being, why is America capturing a Russian ship? Well, of course, it's not a Russian ship. But even if it were a Russian ship, doesn't this play counter to the argument that Donald Trump's in Putin's pocket? Well, of course, that's absolute nonsense. Donald Trump isn't in Putin's pocket. He's doing what he thinks is right for the United States, and capturing the ship is very important. We can't have sanction busters.
Now, where does Britain fit in all of this? Because, of course, we've had aeroplanes take off from American bases in Britain. It looks likely that this tanker is now heading towards Britain, either Liverpool or Glasgow. In many ways, this is now a British problem. And for a Prime Minister who tried to sort of wash his hands of Venezuela, saying he didn't have all the information, he wasn't briefed, it's not his problem, he doesn't want to sort of make an opinion on it.
He does that all the time.
It seems like he has to make an opinion on this.
It's placed our Prime Minister in a very, very difficult position, of course, and I'm not going to pretend to know how he's going to try and get out of it. It's a very difficult one, because the reality is we are intimately bound up with this operation because America is our closest ally, and the United Kingdom is an American aircraft carrier. All the forces...
Airstrip 1.
Airstrip 1. All, if not, or most, if not all of the forces that we used to capture this ship came from the United Kingdom. And, of course, as you said quite correctly, it will end up going to a British port. So at an operational or a military level, we are intimately bound up with what has happened, and there is no doubt that British military capabilities, certainly with the Royal Air Force, will have been closely involved in the operation. We have no choice about that, because we have outsourced much of our security infrastructure to the United States over the last 80 years. We don't have capability that they have, and we are linked into it, whether we like it or not, as part of the NATO apparatus. And for me, that's a very good thing. At a political level, we've got a very, very big challenge here, because it does let the rabbit out of the hat, doesn't it, in terms of where our Prime Minister stands on this. He's going to have to stand by his ally, whether he likes it or not, and whether his friends in the cabinet and the Labour Party agree with it. He's got no choice now. This ship, this tanker in the mid-Atlantic, actually quite close to the United Kingdom now, is really going to force the Prime Minister to
make a decision. But very briefly, then, he has another awkward situation there. That's Greenland.
He's got a very difficult situation with regard to Greenland. I have to say, I don't think he's got a choice with Greenland. Greenland, if the United States wants to take Greenland militarily or diplomatically, it will go to the United States, because power talks. And who's got the power? The United States has got the power. We might kick up a stink, we'll make a lot of noise about it, but actually, at the end of the day, it will be meaningless.
OK, well, Robert Lyman, thanks indeed for coming to the studio. Dr. Robert Lyman, of course.
Thank you very much.
No, prefix is very important, but a military historian, of course. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more to come.
Yes, the cold snap continues. We're live in Stoke-on-Trent, where heavy snow has shut schools and brought chaos this morning.
Now, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, perhaps not in the mid-Atlantic, perhaps in Europe, here's the weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst we've seen the cold weather affect the UK and much of Western Europe, it's turning less cold in Iberia now, whilst it's increasingly unsettled across southeastern parts of Europe, especially Greece and Turkey, where we'll see strong winds and heavy rain moving through during Thursday and Friday. Italy's on the cold side, temperatures a few degrees below average. Meanwhile, temperatures have now recovered for Spain and Portugal, back up to the double figures or the teens in places.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Britain has been blasted with a big freeze as temperatures have plummeted to as low as 12.5 degrees.
Or indeed minus 12.5.
Was it minus?
Well, Storm Goretti has
right,
smothered cities and villages across Britain, with some areas up to 8 inches deep in snow.
Well, I can say this morning when I went, me and Ivory, to walk to school, we're on the path, and suddenly I went, oh, and that was my feet slipping, and then Ivory went, oh, and the two of us held hands, and we literally slid down our path together. I went and put some salt on there, you know, put a bit of salt on there.
I was walking through a park, did exactly the same thing,
Did
but
you?
managed to right myself. Let's go to Jack Carson, our national reporter, in snowy Stoke-on-Trent, because Jack is breathing the breeze for us, and indeed the snow.
I felt sad for Jack, though, because when he was talking earlier, he was really talking through his nose, and I knew that he's obviously getting a bit of a cold, because it's absolutely freezing out there.
It seems like the the cold is also connecting or affecting our connection, but it has been freezing across the country. On my walk through into work this morning, I sort of there was a woman walking a dog opposite me. I was going through a park, and I slipped. It must have looked like something out of a Mickey Mouse cartoon because I was sort of going. My legs were going backwards and forwards, but then righted myself. The woman was laughing as she stood opposite me. Yeah. But I could laugh too, so it was okay.
Well, listen, some of you have been getting in touch because obviously we had the breaking news in this show, which is, as soon as I sat down, the breaking news began about this tanker that's been seized. And Molly says this seized ship might have some serious weapons in it. People should start backing Trump. And that is it, isn't it? A lot of people saying, oh, Donald Trump's doing the wrong thing, Greenland, but actually... I would love to have a leader who was decisive and made some strong decisions rather than sitting on the fence like Keir Starmer.
Although when it comes to Greenland, I'm not sure that I understand what the American position is, because they currently have a lot of bases on Greenland. They have no limits on the number of American troops they can move to Greenland. Denmark has said if they want to extract the minerals in Greenland, they're able to. They'll come to a deal on that.
They don't want China or Russia to be able to do the same thing. They want
I'm
total
sure
control.
Denmark would agree to that.
You don't think? I don't know whether they would. Listen, what do you think anyway? It's been a pleasure having your company this afternoon. I'll be back for Britain's newsroom tomorrow morning. This is Good Afternoon Britain.
Absolutely. I'll be with you on Good Afternoon Britain immediately after Britain's newsroom tomorrow afternoon. But of course, don't go anywhere, because still to come this afternoon, yes, it's the one and only Martin Daubney next.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's staying cold for most of us, and it's, despite the cold, a fine afternoon. But there is further rain and snow to come in places. First of all, further snow showers continuing across the northeast of Scotland. Secondly, this system bringing in a band of cloud and rain to Northern Ireland, parts of West Wales, the southwest by the end of the day. That will fizzle out as it pushes east, although it will bring some snow to inland parts of western Scotland. Once that moves across the UK, it's a largely cloudy end to the night, so not quite as frosty, but still some icy patches, particularly towards the east of the UK, at a cold start wherever you are. Now, the grey skies and the patchy rain first thing will make it feel cold, and we'll see further snow showers coming into Orkney, parts of northeastern Aberdeenshire. A mix of rain, sleet and hill snow in the west of Scotland, in between plenty of dry weather, albeit with a lot of cloud. Northern Ireland a touch brighter, but still largely cloudy. A few showers, rain and sleet coming into the northwest of England, but our attention increasingly focused on this system further southwest. Now, this is a low-pressure system that's deepening rapidly as it approaches the UK, and Météo France named it Storm Goretti because of the risk of widespread disruption from wind across northern France. For the UK, there will be disruptive winds as the wind and rain pick up by the end of the afternoon in the southwest, but it's going to mark a significant contrast between mild air in the southwest, colder air elsewhere. So whilst it will be wet and windy initially for southwestern parts into Wales, what we'll see is some disruptive winds for Cornwall in particular, 80 to 90 mile/hour wind gusts, and some heavy rain before central parts of the country, Wales and the Midlands especially, see the potential for very disruptive snow later Thursday into Friday.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a brand new year and we're giving you the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date.
£85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours.
And we've come to the Aurora Collection Resort here in Lapland to celebrate.
An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours.
For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid.
That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live across the UK, all the very latest news, debates and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got a cracking show, and here's what's on today's menu. Top story, the USA has seized a tanker linked to Venezuelan oil in the North Atlantic that it accused of breaking US sanctions and shipping Iranian oil. And it says that it has also seized a second Venezuelan-linked oil tanker in the Caribbean. What have they done? Why have they done this? And what could the consequences be? We'll bring you the latest on this breaking news story throughout the show. And the Labour Party has plunged to its lowest ever approval rating, with 70% of the British public disapproving of their work. Sir Keir Starmer is now deep into the danger zone. We saw the terminations of Liz Truss, of Theresa May and of Rishi Sunak. Can the PM recover from his New Year nightmare on Downing Street? Or is Sir Keir Starmer a dead Prime Minister walking? And West Midlands Police Chief Constable Craig Guilford's job has become untenable after accusations he capitulated to Islamists. On today's show, I'll be joined by Nick Timothy, the Tory MP, who says he is too arrogant to resign, so the Home Secretary should sack him. And Labour has vowed to cut the drink-drive limit down to merely 1 pint. A similar cut in Scotland did not reduce road accidents, and the cut would be another huge blow for struggling pub landlords. Could the move kill country pubs? I'll speak to a worried landlord. Meanwhile, the big freeze continues. Schools have closed, travel chaos is abundant, and Storm Goretti is incoming with 20 centimetres worth of snow inbound. Will your area feel the effects? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Only 3 times in British political history has a government been less popular than Sir Keir Starmer's Labour government, and all 3 times in the past being this unpopular led to the resignation of Theresa May, the resignation of Liz Truss, and the annihilation of Rishi Sunak at the last general election. Surely now Sir Keir Starmer is drinking in Last Chance Saloon, or can there be a miracle? Can the PM pull his party back from the brink? Let us know your thoughts on that and also all the rest of today's top stories. I'm also joined by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson for 3 hours of arguing. 3 hours of fun awaits us all. Get in touch usual ways by commenting at gbnews.com/your say, or you can scan the QR code on your screens now if that tickles your fancy. But now it's time for your news headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock. Well, the top story this hour: the United States has seized a second oil tanker in the space of hours, this time in the Caribbean, in what the military calls a crackdown on so-called dark fleet shipping. Officials say the vessel was intercepted in a pre-dawn operation believed to be carrying out illicit activities in international waters and is now being escorted to the US. The move follows a seizure of a Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic earlier, with reports now suggesting UK Royal Air Force aircraft and British air bases were involved in supporting that US operation. Downing Street, though, says it will not comment on the operation, calling it a long-standing policy not to discuss the actions of other nations. In other news this hour, Sir Keir Starmer has said MPs will be given a vote on whether British troops are deployed to Ukraine if a peace deal with Russia is agreed. The Prime Minister says the move would follow recent practice after the UK, France and Ukraine signed a declaration of intent to deploy forces to help police any future settlement and deter further Russian aggression. But the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says that questions remain over the scale and risks of any deployment.
No Prime Minister, Labour or Conservative, has failed to make a statement to the House in person after committing to the deployment of British troops. His comments about making a statement in due course, quite frankly, are not good enough. It shows a fundamental lack of respect for all of us here.
But Sir Keir Starmer insisted that Britain must be ready to play its part and told MPs any deployment would focus on deterrence, protecting key military hubs and preventing Russia from further violence.
If there were to be deployment, there would have to be a legal instrument. Mr. Speaker, deployment would only be after a ceasefire to support Ukraine's capabilities, to conduct deterrent operations and to construct